We're taught that loyalty is a good thing, standing by your people, protecting your friends, not betraying the group. And in healthy relationships, loyalty can be a virtue. But there's another version of loyalty that people don't talk about. The version that stays quiet when someone is being harmed. The version that repeats the story everyone agreed on. The version that looks the other way because speaking up would cost too much. And when that kind of loyalty takes over, something strange happens. The group stops protecting the truth and starts protecting itself. Psychologists have been studying this behavior for decades, and what they found is that when people are inside of a group, their behavior can change in ways that surprises even them. People who would normally help stay silent. People who would normally question something go along with it. And harm can continue, not because nobody saw it, but because the group protects itself instead of the victim. One of the most famous demonstrations of this happened in 1968. In what's known as the seizure experiment, researchers had college students participate in what they thought was a discussion over an intercom. During the discussion, another participant suddenly appeared to have an epileptic seizure. When students believed they were the only person listening, about 85% rushed to help. But when they thought several other people were also listening, helping dropped to around 31%. In other words, the more people who were present, the less likely anyone was to act. Psychologists called this the diffusion of responsibility. Each person assumes someone else will step in. And because everyone thinks that, nobody does. Another famous experiment showed something similar. Participants were filling out questionnaires in a room when smoke began seeping in through a vent. When people were alone, about 75% reported the smoke. But when they were sitting in a group, many of them stayed seated, doing nothing, even as the room visibly filled with smoke. Why? Because people looked at the other group members to decide how to react. When no one else moved, they assumed the situation must not be serious. Psychologists call this pluralistic ignorance. Everyone privately senses something is wrong, but because no one else reacts, people convince themselves it's probably fine. Another powerful group dynamic is something called groupthink. This concept was developed by psychologist Irving Janis. Groupthink happens when a tightly connected group becomes so focused on maintaining harmony that members stop questioning decisions or challenging harmful behavior. Instead of asking, "Is this right?" the group starts asking, "Are we all in agreement?" Janis identified several warning signs of groupthink. Pressure on people who disagree. Self-censorship. The illusion that everyone agrees. People acting as mind guards, shielding the group from information that could disrupt the consensus. In other words, the group starts protecting unity over reality. So why do people think like this? Why would someone stay silent when they know something is wrong? There are three major psychological forces that often drive this kind of behavior. In-group identity. Humans tie their sense of identity to the groups they belong to. Friends, families, communities. When someone threatens the group, it can feel like they're threatening you personally. So protecting the group, even when the group is wrong, can feel like protecting yourself. Fear of exclusion. Challenging a group comes with risks. People who speak up may be labeled disloyal, dramatic, or a snitch. They may lose friendships, status, or their place in the group. For many people, that social cost feels terrifying. So instead of confronting the harm, they stay silent. Cognitive dissonance. There's also a psychological discomfort that comes from realizing someone you trust might be capable of serious harm. If your friend does something abusive, you now have two conflicting beliefs. My friend is a good person, and my friend just hurt someone. To resolve that conflict, many people rewrite the story. They minimize what happened. They blame the victim. They convince themselves it wasn't that serious. All of those mental adjustments make it easier to stay loyal to the group, instead of facing the truth. When group loyalty becomes stronger than truth, people stop acting as individuals and start protecting the group. One case where this dynamic raised serious questions is the death of Shanquella Robinson. In October 2022, Robinson traveled from North Carolina to Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, with 6 people she considered friends. The next day, she was found unresponsive in the villa where the group was staying. Her companions told her family she had died from alcohol poisoning. But later, an autopsy revealed something very different. The report showed severe neck and spinal cord injuries consistent with violent trauma, and a video later surfaced showing Robinson being beaten in the villa shortly before her death. The group dynamic appears in what happened after the assault. Multiple companions repeated the same alcohol poisoning explanation to Robinson's family. Accounts of the events were inconsistent, and despite a doctor recommending stronger medical intervention, Robinson was not taken to the hospital. From the outside, it appeared that the group's priority was not confronting the violence, but managing the situation as if it were a medical emergency. A shared story, a controlled narrative, and a group protecting itself. When groups protect themselves this way, the consequences can be devastating. In Robinson's case, the conflicting accounts delayed recognition that a homicide may have occurred. The investigation became complicated across 2 countries. Years later, no one has been criminally charged, even though Mexican authorities issued a warrant for a suspected direct aggressor. For Robinson's family, the silence of the people who were with her has prolonged their grief and forced them into civil lawsuits seeking accountability. Situations like this reveal something important about abuse. It often doesn't survive because no one saw it. It survives because the people who saw it choose loyalty over truth. Friend groups can normalize abusive behavior. People stay silent to avoid conflict. And victims can become isolated when the entire group closes ranks. Survivors often describe that silence as a second betrayal, not just the harm itself, but the realization that no one around them was willing to stop it. Abuse often survives not because it's hidden, but because too many people decide that protecting the group matters more than protecting the victim. Understanding these patterns matter, because once you recognize them, the silence surrounding abuse becomes much harder to ignore. That's what this channel is about, looking beyond the events and understanding psychological patterns that allow harm to continue.